Hello, welcome to Paramusic TV. I'm Johnny Long with another edition of Paramusic Hall of Fame. And on this edition, we're going to be featuring our first inductee. Of course, I want you to remember that these are the artists that influenced me in my career. This isn't about who's better than anyone else. These are my own personal choices. And I'm also trying to go in somewhat of a chronological order as these artists came into my personal radar. I also mentioned in my first episode about how media was limited then as compared to today with all the choices we have, including the internet. Back then, there were only 3 major television networks and only a handful of variety shows and a couple of shows that had begun that focused more on music. Now, not a lot of artists had a lot of television exposure at the time. This was starting to change right around the time that I started learning how to play guitar. It seemed that only a select few kind of transcended the limitations, and a great example of this will be my first inductee, John Denver. Now, a lot of people are going to be maybe surprised about this, but you have to remember we are talking around 1975. John Denver's career had really taken off. The first song I ever heard that I can remember was Take Me Home Country Roads, which I believe was released in 1971. So when I did start playing guitar, although this song had made its way through the radio and the charts, it was still widely played. You could hear it just about any time, and I was totally entranced. John Denver's voice, a lot of people make fun of the music that he recorded because it was kind of sweet and sappy, some would say, but to me it was glorious. Now, Denver started out as a member of the Chad Mitchell Trio. Denver's success would be as a songwriter, when one of the first songs that he had demoed himself, which was originally called Babe I Hate to Go, would eventually become Leavin' on a Jet Plane. And many artists at this time recorded this song, one of the most notable being Peter, Paul, and Mary. But even one of the first hits of a group that I used to work with, the Kindles, one of their first hits was a country version of Leavin' on a Jet Plane. And once he got his foot in the door with all of this, he would leave the Chad Mitchell Trio and become a solo artist. But unfortunately, his first 3 albums met with minimal success. Denver's 4th album, Poems, Prayers, and Promises, which featured Take Me Home Country Roads, Poems, Prayers, and Promises, which I don't think was a hit on the radio, but has become one of Denver's most known songs. Take Me Home Country Roads was really the biggest hit off of that album, and it definitely paved the way for his next album, which was Rocky Mountain High, his first top 10 album, and would include, of course, Rocky Mountain High, Sunshine on My Shoulders, Annie's Song, Thank God I'm a Country Boy, I'm Sorry. All these songs hit number 1. And much of Denver's success on television was the brainchild of Jerry Weintraub, Denver's first manager, when he realized Denver's music was probably not going to be very popular among the critics. The best strategy was to get his music to the people. And television was the best avenue for this. So Denver would appear on a bunch of variety shows, which would lead to the television special, An Evening with John Denver, which was hugely successful, along the lines of Elvis's Aloha from Hawaii, which had been filmed a couple of years before this, and would solidify John Denver's image, of course with the long blonde hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and the stage outfits that would be seen now as more country-oriented, reflective of the American West. This became John Denver's image for the rest of his career and life. Now, the amazing thing about Denver's music was its broad appeal. All the hit songs charted on the pop, country, adult contemporary. Now, if you were to ask John Denver what kind of music he played, he probably would have called himself a folk artist, along the lines of, Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, Peter, Paul and Mary. But it seems that his music also had a broad appeal to country fans. And in 1975, when he was named Country Music Entertainer of the Year by the Country Music Association, Charlie Rich, who was the outgoing Entertainer of the Year that presented the award, for reasons that now nobody is certain of, after announcing Denver's name, he actually took the card and burned it right there on television. Now, most consider this a protest against Denver's non-traditional country roots, which, when you hear the songs, like even Country Roads, while they were, I think, considered folk mostly at the time, they fit comfortably in the country charts. Now, Charlie Rich's son claims now that although it was evident that Rich was drunk, but he was also on pain meds, and at the time he was just trying to be funny, but it didn't appear very funny. Anyhow, Denver's music seemed to, on one hand, appeal to so many kinds of audiences, but yet you had the ones that really considered him, as some put it, lightweight. Well, it was true to a point. I mean, not all of his songs were slow ballads, but he was definitely mellow compared to the normal sound at the time. However, again, I just could never get past the voice. His voice was just so incredible. Now, that's the basics of his rise to success through the 70s and 80s. I think his last official hit was Some Days Are Diamond, which was a huge country hit. But even through the 80s and 90s, he would still be a presence on television. He would be on the Muppet Show, which would lead to a lifelong friendship with Jim Henson, and they would do several Christmas specials. And I would actually get to see him live in 1994 when he came to Branson, Missouri, to the Grand Palace, which was a 5,000 seat venue. And he was magnificent. His voice was as good as ever. And his touring band was Elvis's old touring band. Jerry Sheft, Ronnie Tutt, Glenn Hardin, and James Burton, whom I actually got to meet. But Denver was on top of his game for the entire show. But unfortunately, 3 years after that, in 1997, he would be killed in a plane crash just off the coast of California, in an experimental plane that he had just bought a few months previous. I hope you enjoyed this edition of Paramusic Hall of Fame. Please leave comments, please like and subscribe, but that's all for now. And I hope here in a few weeks to have another inductee into the Paramusic Hall of Fame. Thank you very much.